My name is Izzeddin Hawamda, and I was born and raised in a small rural village just outside the city of Nablus in the West Bank, Palestine. Today I live in Winnipeg, Canada. I have a PhD in peace and conflict studies, and I work as an anti-racist educator in the public school system. I tell stories of Palestine, inviting the world to recognize the human face of my story. When you hear the word home, what comes to mind? For most, the concept of home is associated with comfort and belonging, a sense of calm and peace, a respite from the challenges of the world, a home cooked meal. Home is where the heart is. Make yourself at home. For me, as a Palestinian Canadian, the notion of home is much more complicated. While I have warm memories of grandfather telling stories under the old olive tree and memories of grandmother sharing songs as she baked fresh bread, I too have immense anxiety when I tell people I'm from Palestine. When I tell people I'm from Palestine, I'm often met with comments about it not being a real country because they don't see it on the map, or they see this as an opening for a political debate. Today, I hope to share stories of my home and what a welcome home means to me. My teta, my grandmother, used to say, the welcome we should say to those who come onto our land should become deeper and deeper every time we see them, encompassing both of our worlds, making it one. The welcome should reflect my ruhi, my soul, as it entwines with the other person's soul like wild thyme holding on to the mountain. My teta used to say, strangers must eat food together. They must eat bread and salt together. Salt for hard days and bread for good days. When a meal is shared, stories are shared, and people make connections. I watched her do this throughout my life. She would stir her old metal pot on the stove as she sang Ya Zarif Atul, a folklore of a Palestinian who travels Palestine collecting gifts and fruits to appease his lover's parents. My grandmother would get her bowl out of the cabinet and put it in the middle of our kitchen. As a boy and you, I was waiting for the meal to finish so I could fill the bowl with food to take to our neighbors. My grandmother would say that this bowl traveled our village like Zarif traveled Palestine. The day before, our neighbors sent us my favorite meal, dawali, grape leaves. The meals that my grandmother cooked and sent to people were accompanied with stories of birth, the arrival of spring, the moment when poetry leaves you. As I listened, watched, and carried the bowl with food from home to home, my heart grew so big, like a forest. When I arrived at a neighbor's home and knocked on the door, a mother would answer the door and greet me saying, "Wait, let me make you a sandwich. You have a long walk back." In my village, the bowl was communal property. Everyone used it to share foods and stories. My grandmother would advise me, if you ever find yourself alone, cook a meal and share it with anyone. The bowl was my grandmother's connection to her land and to the morning sun. She would pick lemons and saffron from our land and say that this land is the ink in which we write our stories. Now, as I knock on my neighbors' doors to share a meal with them, I remember her words and share my dreams with them. The meals and the stories were the gifts. The long walk to my neighbor's home was the journey to the gifts. The sandwich that the mother made me was like a flock of pigeons that carried pieces of my stories and hung them from the minarets, so the passerby remembers my teta. I long to return to that home. The world I was born into, the one I was raised in, made no sense. surrounded by such beauty, the land full of rolling hills, green pastures, clear streams, strong olive trees, a community full of welcoming neighbors that become extended family. The sun, the rain, the animals on the farm, that is home. But I was also surrounded by armed soldiers, military tanks, stolen lands, destroyed homes, a 25-foot walls that prevented the freedom of travel, ID checks, daily checkpoints on the way to school, sadness, anger, and destruction. That too is home. Every time I plan a trip back to Palestine, I'm filled with dread and excitement. The trip from Winnipeg to Amman, Jordan, usually goes smoothly. The 150 kilometers between Amman and Nablus is a different story. Thinking about crossing the border between Jordan and the West Bank causes my heart to race and tighten in my chest until it's hard to breathe. Because crossing the border involves a face-to-face confrontation with the occupation. The space between Jordan King Hussein's border crossing and Al-Nabi, Israel border crossing, known among Palestinians as the bridge, is occupied by the Israeli military. If I want to feel the land underneath my feet, the sun on my cheeks, the warmth of my family's embrace, I must endure the occupier in the burning sun of the Jordan Valley. The memories of occupation live deep in my soul and heart. Yet I'm not confronted by it every day. As I arrive at the bridge, I am hit with a sense of guilt, living a life removed from the reality of my friends, communities, and relatives. I'm only able to find relief when I hear children and grandchildren start to sing songs that remind me of my grandmother and her infinite capacity for resilience. I arrange my documents into 3 categories: Jordanian, Israeli, Palestinian. I can hear the long line of people breathe so heavily in what seems to be synchronized inhales and exhales, as if the common experience has transformed us into a single entity, common suffering, common goal. As we enter the prison-like structure of the border crossing, a military jeep blocks the sun from touching my face. My body aches for the smell of home, but yet there is uncertainty ahead. There are lines and barriers everywhere. One line for your suitcase to be searched. One line where to remove your clothes. And one line where there is only more uncertainty. All the lines are meant to make you feel that as a Palestinian on this side of the bridge, you are not a human. Hours later, I make it through the line, and I am approved to leave Jordan. I get on the bus to head towards the Israeli side of the border. They will determine whether I get to see my family before sunset, or if, for any reason or no reason at all, I am turned around and sent back to Jordan. As I sit on the bus, I am now reminded every heartbeat in my chest is now under occupation. The bus drivers breathe heavily as he shows his permits for the 6th time in less than 10 minutes. A soldier points his gun at a woman holding a child in her arms and shouts, "You are nothing here. to ensure that there isn't even the illusion of freedom in the occupied territories. I can sense the land smiling. It has welcomed me with beauty so captivating it makes me breathless. Military towers appear on each side of the bus. The towers have been built among the palm trees and the mountains, as if to taunt me. Soldiers ask for papers and documents that I've never heard of before, despite making the journey many times before. The soldiers talk quickly and harshly to let all of us on the bus know that we have inconvenienced them. The soldiers are frustrated that we continue to return. The soldiers are even more frustrated that we return with our children and grandchildren. The soldiers know that children preserve the land. As I sit on the bus on the road to Jericho, I can see and smell the land smiling. It has been longing for me. The land sings the songs of my ancestors. The land sings, Ya Ahl al-Rumman. You are the people of the pomegranate. With every millimeter, my home is 1 second closer to my fingertips. The experiences of the bridge linger. The occupier's fingerprints are imprinted on my body and soul. I wonder about the young family that I met at the bridge. Were the young children coming home for the first time allowed to enter? I spend the rest of the trip in silence, as if my vocabularies and words were seized and searched at the bridge. After a 12-hour journey that should have taken less than 2, I finally meet my family. They were waiting hours for my arrival. I embraced their hugs and shed tears on their shoulders. Together we got on the bus to Naples. I can feel the wild thyme sprout from my chest. As soon as I enter the West Bank, I can feel and see the occupation expanding everywhere. I can see settlements expanding over the mountains and over the villages. I can see long lines of school children waiting at the checkpoint. I breathe in the hopelessness brought on by the occupation, and I breathe out the joy of sitting next to my family on the land of my ancestors. At the checkpoint, my homelands await. I look out the window to the mountains, and I ask myself, will I live long enough to see my land free? At the checkpoint, until I touch my land, you are all welcome to come into my small brick home, where I will ask you about your home. I will get a tea kettle and I'll put it on the stove, and I'll add meramia sage as the water starts to boil. Next to the tea kettle, I'll put zayt and za'atar, and I'll pour you a cup of tea, and I'll give you a piece of bread, and I'll say, eat zayt and za'atar so you can know my land. Now that you've heard one story, a single voice, what will you do? Shukran. Thank you.